And we're live! Hello everybody and welcome to Lunch and Learn. Cue the theme music, people. Feel free to join us on Zoom. We have a lively bunch tuned in today. And to all those watching on YouTube as well and Facebook, how wonderful it is to have you on board with us. So, Lunch and Learn. We're sorry that we're starting so late. We were having a very interesting discussion on Zoom and we are now ready to start. There's no Torah reading this week in terms of the parasha. We won't be reading Ha'azilu this week. It's going to be the Torah reading for Rosh Hashanah, but perhaps just one very quick Rosh Hashanah related insight that I will share before diving into Pirkei Avot. Where's my book? It's over there. So I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but as we know, on Rosh Hashanah we blow a few different types of notes. We blow a tekiah, which is the straight note. We blow shavarim, which is 3 notes, do do do, and we blow a teruah, which is I think they call it staccato, but I'm not very good with the music proficiency or the technical words for things, but I think it's a staccato, and it's do 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 do. So those are the different types of notes that we blow with the shofar. And I heard a wonderful idea from a rabbi in New York called Y.Y. Jacobson, who said that these notes represent the moments in our lives when things do not always go according to plan. The tekiah, that straightforward, pure sound, represents us when we are born and we come into this world with opportunities ahead of us, with our potential to be fulfilled. Everything is straightforward, everything is wholesome, and it's amazing. But as time goes on, we might make mistakes. And so we have our woes, and we have those moments that start to pressurize us and weigh us down, and that gets signified by the shavarim sound, which is like, oh, these moments that make us groan. And then we have the moments which really shatter us and break us and make us break down and cry, and that's represented by the teruah. That's what the teruah represents. But then he says, after you've gone through your shavarim, your groans, your woes, after you've gone through the sobbing and the weeping, you then have a tekiah again at the end, with the right help, with the right assistance, with the right mindset, with the right therapy, whatever it might be. You can get yourself back to a place of tekiah, of wholesomeness, of stability, of strong mental health, of positivity. That's represented by the tekiah that caps it off each of those sets. So please God, this year should be for us a year of tekiyahs, a year of wholesomeness, a year of happiness, a year of health, a year of success, a year of prosperity. So that's our wish for everybody here today and watching whenever you're watching. All right, let's go on. Amen. Absolutely. Let's go on with some Pirkei Avot. Let's see how much we do, given the amount of time we have now. We're going to get it live. We're going to get it up on the screen over here. Beautiful. All right. So we are up to, according to whichever version you're using, we're somewhere between like 9 and 11, I would imagine. We're going to be doing this one. On the screen, it's number 9. In my book, it's number 11 and number 12, but different people will be in different places. So let's take a little look at this together and let's see what people think. We're gonna probably do it break it down, the first 2 lines and then the second 2 lines. So let's see how far we get. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa Omer. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa says, Kol sheyiras cheto kodemes lachachmato. Anyone whose fear of sin precedes his wisdom, chachmato mitzkayemes. His wisdom will last. His wisdom is enduring. V'kol shechachmato kodemes liyiras cheto. Anyone whose wisdom is the priority instead of fear of sin, ein chachmato mitzkayemes. Then his wisdom is not enduring. His wisdom does not last. So let's start with that. prioritizing a fear of sin over wisdom or wisdom over sin has different consequences. What do we think?
That's a difficult one. When it says wisdom, does it mean learning?
Okay, very good. So the short answer is yes. And the long answer, or the longer short answer, is up for debate. Certainly, the simplest explanation when it says chokhmah in these mishnayos, in these teachings, is referring to Torah knowledge. But the lessons will obviously penetrate into other areas as well. 100%.
It's a very difficult one.
I took a reading that if you had a fear of sin or committed something that was a sin, but you didn't know it was a sin because you didn't have the wisdom to know that it was a sin, then when you did get the wisdom, it would be enduring and you wouldn't do the sin again. But anyone who has the wisdom and knew it was a sin, and then he still did the sin anyway, is probably in deep doodah.
Deep doodah. Zippity doodah. Very good. Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Very beautiful point. And perhaps it's a manifestation of the wisdom not enduring. If it was, if you were true to your wisdom, you would not have made that mistake. And so, if you have the wisdom, but not the fear of sin, then your wisdom is not enduring. You know, kayam. When we use the Hebrew word kayam, it has a few different connotations. But I guess we could use words such as enduring, lasting, fixed in place, standing, usable. These are all kind of the connotations that come out of the word miskayem or miskayemes. So yes, very good pool. Anyone else got something to chime in with?
It's an interesting word, wisdom, isn't it? Because you can have somebody who's not well educated, but is a very wise person.
Yeah.
Not with someone who's got all the knowledge in the world and can obtain it and can retain it and everything else, but can be an absolute idiot. I wonder how we define wisdom. Kai, it's
Well, the interesting thing about your point, Martin, is that the notes that I was preparing, I had basically linked the wisdom and the fear of sin to make the point that you were making. Yeah, you can have all of the wisdom, you can be amazing at something, you can have so much talent, so much ability, be able to contribute so much, but you're right, without the fear of sin, as I would have said it, without the fear of sin, you could be an absolute rotter.
Yeah. By sin, we could substitute sin with knowing the difference between right and wrong.
Yes, and that's interesting as well, because there's a nuance that I picked up on here in the wording of this Mishnah. See, it doesn't say anyone whose fear of God takes priority over wisdom. It says fear of sin, right? And I think that there's a bit of a difference, because you can have very many people in the world who don't believe in God, or don't acknowledge God's existence, or don't think about things like God. And I think for that reason, the Mishnah doesn't say that you have to prioritize fear of God over your wisdom. What it says is you have to prioritize your fear of sin. Everybody, and not only that, but the word that it uses, chet. When we use the word chet, so we translate it as sin, and our minds conjure up all kinds of images when we say the word sin. But the essence of the Hebrew word chet actually denotes a mistake, a target. There's a verse somewhere that uses the same root of the word chet in the context of an archer missing a target. Now, I think I mentioned that before. But so when we do a sin in Judaism, when we do a chet, what we're doing is missing our target. There was there was an expectation of a right way to do things, and we've missed that. And so chet is the missing of a target, is the making of a mistake, and teshuvah is the process that helps realign ourselves and get us back on that track again. So when the Mishnah says that you have to have fear of sin above and beyond your wisdom, the fear of chet as opposed to the fear of God, I think the message that it's trying to give us is that you can be so amazing at things. You can have so much wisdom, so much intelligence, so much knowledge, so much experience, but unless you've got a barometer to help steer you, then many bad things could happen. The benefits of the wisdom that you have, the benefits of your skills and your talents could be used to the detriment of other people and the detriment of society. So it's important to have a barometer that keeps us focused. Now, as Jews, our barometer is given to us by Hashem in the Torah. But ultimately, anybody is capable of appreciating where the right path should be. But sometimes people can get veered very, very severely off track, and we've seen throughout history what that does to society. So that's what I would have said to you, Martin. What do you think?
Yeah, I understand. But as I say, going to something that you said, that there are people who we know are very wise and in their own field who are not very good at associating with other people or converting that into goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many what we would call good people who can't accept the concept of Hashem. But I think wisdom is something entirely different from knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I know I have come across in my life people who unfortunately never had the ability or the opportunity for education, but they were very wise.
Yes.
And were very kind and people. And I know come across people who had every opportunity and were exceedingly clever.
Yeah.
But didn't have very much wisdom.
And I think the root to that is the inner compass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fear of sin.
Yeah.
As opposed to a fear of God, which I think it really is accessible to everybody. There's a famous question, which is why we've got 613 mitzvot in the Torah, but none of those mitzvot is about having the right character traits. There are mitzvot that are there to bring out the positive character traits of an individual, the generosity and the mercy and all that kind of thing. But we don't have a mitzvah in the Torah to be a nice guy. We don't have a mitzvah in the Torah to be calm, to be whatever it might be. These character traits and the way in which we identify what we call midot in Hebrew. There's no commandment to have good midot, to have good midas, right? But instead, what we may be familiar with is the concept of derech eretz kadma Torah, the way of actually interacting with the world, the way in which we actually behave. Our behavior does not need to be explicitly commanded in the Torah, because there's an assumption that that's going to be your foundation. That's your starting place. That's the foundation of everything. You won't be able to live a good life, and you won't be able to do the mitzvot, and you won't be able to interact with the world in a positive way unless you have a strong foundation of midot, of good characteristics. So they're not explicitly commanded in the Torah, because it should be a given that we have those things already. So the Meiri, one of the commentaries, says that wisdom without a fear of sin, without the barometer, without the inner compass, is like a building without a foundation. It looks great from the outside. Oh, look how wise this person is. Look how academically proficient they are. But if they're rotten at the core, if they don't have a foundation to support the structure, then it will all come crumbling down. One of the beautiful analogies that I saw for this is if you were to hire a team of builders to build you a house, and they spend months on the project, and you pay the bill, and then right after the end, they come at you with another bill. It's another, whatever it is, £10,000 added to the bill, and you look at what it's itemized for, and it says it's for the foundations, and you say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not paying extra for the foundations. That's a given. If you're building me a structure, it needed to have the foundations in it already. That's not something that you add on. So the message is that you have to have a foundation. You have to have a basis. But that's the given. That's the kli. That's the vessel for which everything is going to be held in. That's not something that needs to be commanded, because how else are you planning to do it if you don't have that? So I heard someone trying to jump in before.
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah.
You said there's nothing in the Torah which is that what you just said? There's nothing.
Yeah, there's not a mitzvah of having good midas.
Right, but if you are one of those who doing the 613, if this is possible, probably not, spot, you are a good person anyway, don't you?
Yes, what I'm saying is that the starting point for everybody to be able to fully engage with the full remit of the Torah is to have a basis of being a mensch.
The basis is given in the womb, isn't it?
Pardon me?
The basis is given in the womb. The child is born. Some of them are very bright, some of them are less bright, and some of them, unfortunately, have got something wrong. So the foundation is the baby in the womb.
I would say that the foundation is once we start to become, be able to process things ourselves and have our own independent thought. So it's lovely having a tick box of mitzvot to do, but we also have to constantly be checking ourselves. Am I a giver? Am I a helper? Am I kind? Do I get angry easily? All these questions that we might, think about, especially at this time of year. These are very much the givens. These are, the equal playing field for everybody. Where do you rank on the scale of having good character traits? These things are the foundations that you then build upon with everything else. That was more the point I was trying to make.
But sin is such a huge area.
Yeah.
It's not defined. There's no attempt to define it. And if you're not careful, you're always trying to avoid sinning. So you've got no room for wisdom. How do you get a balance?
It's a fair question. I'm just not sure I entirely agree with the premise. I think that there is time left for wisdom. I think that's the point. But we're supposed to live in a state of mindfulness where we're constantly checking that what we're doing is correct. And different people will do that in different ways. But the point here is more to have the awareness that we need to check ourselves. If a person studies and works and does dissertation after dissertation and PhD after PhD, and then they kind of get themselves onto this high horse of look how clever I am, look how intellectual I am, look how intelligent I am, but they're never putting in the work to make sure that these gifts are being used for good, then what good is that wisdom? And that's the point that Martin was making, and that's, I think, the point that the Mishnah is making as well, which is, wisdom is a wonderful thing, intellect is a wonderful thing, talent, creativity, these are all wonderful things. People can contribute so much. There's no limits to the power of an individual, but there's a level of responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. And so there has to be a basis, there has to be a foundation, there has to be something that's guiding, there has to be some rules in place that are going to make sure to harness your talent and your creativity and your wisdom to only have a positive effect on the world. So I think that there's definitely time for both. I'm not saying it's easy, but when did I ever say that it had to be easy?
Not including.
You know,
I've read in one of my books, I read an analogy. It said it's like you love your parents and you don't want to sin against them. You don't want to sin because you don't want to hurt them. And similarly, if you love God, who's all the awe and wonder, the fear isn't fright. It's just in awe of the wonders that you don't want to sin against what you've been told, the goodness, sin against the commandments.
That's a beautiful point as well. But if I may, I'd like to take it in one extra dimension and one extra direction. Not just if we were to have the cognizance of not wanting to, disappoint God, but if we were to realize that as a human race, as a Jewish people, whichever frame of reference you want to use, if we were to realize that we are all created in the image of God, if we were to realize how interconnected each and every single one of us are, it's not just a case of why would I ever want to do something that would damage my relationship with God? Why would I ever want to do something that would damage my relationship with the people around me? It's a famous, a famous analogy that, if your hand was to strike your face, you wouldn't get angry with the hand and cut it off, or wound your hand because it's just come into contact with your cheek in a rather painful way. You would never cut off one part of your body out of anger or out of disappointment or out of insult or whatever it is. In the same way, if we were to realize that every person is a part of our spiritual body, we're all connected, why would you ever want to damage, cause injury, hurt, harm, whatever it is? Why would you ever want to do that to another person if they are an extension of yourself? So I would take what you're saying, Joe, and I would extend it as well into how we treat other people. I think it's the same thing, the same concept. So the first part of this said that anyone whose fear of sin takes priority over his wisdom will endure. Anyone whose wisdom takes priority over his fear of sin, then his wisdom will not endure. So one very interesting thing, this is all very interesting, but one thing that caught my eye is this idea that there we go. The screen froze. I had a phone call on the YouTube feed, and it was just as I was scratching my nose just there. So when the picture came back on my phone, all I could see was me like that. Anyway, so wisdom taking priority over our fear of sin. So here there was a very interesting point made. It'll be interesting to see what you think of this. If we constantly wait to understand things, if we have a perspective in life where we say, I'm not going to engage with my Jewish identity, I'm not going to engage with the Torah and with the mitzvot, I'm not going to engage with my Torah learning, I'm not going to engage with my Jewish practice, whatever it is, I'm not going to engage with it until I understand it, until I have the wisdom to appreciate where it's all coming from. So the point just had another phone call. How do I tell people to leave me alone? Right, so then we're never going to get started. We won't get off the starting blocks if we're constantly waiting and expecting for our wisdom to catch up before we go into something and before we embark on the journey, etc., etc. So that's a very interesting thing as well. I think I've used this story before, so please forgive me if you have heard this before. But there's a brilliant little anecdote that I think helps us with this point. And it goes as follows. You had a guy who owned a prize horse. It was extremely expensive horse, extremely successful, beautiful, beautiful horse. And he wanted to look after it. So he got built a beautiful big stable to be able to have all of the creature comforts for his horse. He went and put fences around